Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. My children were born into a partisan world. I don't mean that figuratively. My wife gave birth to twins on November 8th, 2000, the day after George W. Bush either did or did not win Florida and the presidency. On election night, we thought Al Gore had won. The next day, the Secretary of the State had a different idea, and then there was a recount, and then the recount stopped, and the Supreme Court stopped it for good. I certainly thought that the wrong guy had come out on top. My wife and I had voted in that election, and we had voted for the Democrat, but we weren't actively involved in politics at the time. I had started my writing career as a newspaper reporter, so I was supposed to maintain at least a veneer of objectivity. Also, for a number of years, my employer was a newspaper called the Waterbury Republican American, and so showing a Democratic bias would not have been good for job security. Now that I was in Florida and writing about IT instead of politics, I thought I could have a little bit more leeway. So by the time John Kerry ran for president, my wife and I became active volunteers. We were phone banking, trying to help with the get out to vote effort. We thought it was so important to get W out of office, and we couldn't understand how it could even be close, but it was. Now, that was also the year that a new senator with a funny name, Barack Obama, made quite an impression giving a speech at the Democratic National Convention. He said, there is not a black America and a white America and a Latino America and an Asian America. There is the United States of America. The pundits like to divide us, carve us up into red states and blue states. Red states for Republicans, blue states for Democrats. But I've got news for them too. We worship an awesome God in the blue states, and we don't like federal agents poking around our libraries in the red states. Went on to sketch this vision of uniting the country that I still find kind of inspiring, even though it hasn't quite worked out. Funny thing though, my wife and I went to a local Democratic organizing event that year, and at some point it broke up into caucuses. There was the Black Caucus, and the Latino Caucus, and the Jewish Caucus, and the Gay Caucus. And we said, we're not any of these things. Where do we fit in? So we certainly saw the imperfections of our chosen party. But we still wanted to win, and of course we didn't that year. And it seemed that one reason was that maybe the Republicans were a little bit better organized, so we had to be better organized too. I tried to do my part. I set up an organizing website called Blue Broward, which I still run. And eventually I became a member of the County Democratic Committee, which required me to sign a loyalty oath. Republicans have to sign too, saying that I would not support anybody from the other party. Now, for the record, I actually found that a little bit hard to swallow. I still do believe that if the Democrat is a jerk or a crook, and the Republican seems to be a decent guy, you should vote for the Republican. As a practical matter, it doesn't mean anything, that oath, about who I'm going to vote for, because we do have a secret ballot in this company, but I can't openly support somebody from the other party. Now, I will say that in general, I'm not tempted to vote for somebody from the other party. For whatever reason, that is the way my preferences line up. And I'm sad about that, actually. I would like to be torn about who to vote for, because they're both so terrific. Wouldn't that be great? And elections ought to be about choosing the people who have the most energy and the best ideas for improving our country. And usually I don't feel that. Sometimes I'm a little bit torn about who is the least worst candidate. That's a different matter. Political parties are not in the Constitution at all. In fact, the Founding Fathers thought that they were a terrible idea. They had seen how parties worked in the British Parliament. So from Washington on down, they tended to oppose the idea, but somehow parties came into existence anyway. From the time of 1796, when it was time to choose Washington's successor, it was John Adams for the Federalists, beating Thomas Jefferson's Democratic Republicans. We've had two major parties ever since, with just one major realignment. Eventually the Democratic Republicans just became the Democrats, and the modern Republican Party became the second major party after the election of Lincoln. So some of it is just competitive dynamics. We turn everything into a damn team sport in this country. But consider the story of the old man who was asked who was going to vote for in the coming election. And he said, well, the Democrats said they pay me $5 to vote for them. The Republicans said they pay me $10 to vote for them. So you'll vote for the Republicans? No, I'm voting for the Democrats because I figure they're less corrupt. You could change the labels around, maybe have the Democrats handing out government jobs. Ultimately, the parties are not the same, nor should there be. That doesn't mean we can't laugh at them. I'm Toastmasters.